work. Every keyword has the ability to have settings applied to it. These settings are called matching options, and they help you control how closely the keyword needs to match a person's search term in order to trigger your ad. There are 5 main types of keyword options: broad match modifier, phrase match, exact match, and negative match. When you go to add your keywords to an ad group, you'll have the opportunity to select these matching options. And I'll discuss how to be setting these up in your campaigns in a later movie, but for now, let's talk about what each of these 5 types means. The first is broad match, and by default, every keyword is a broad match. This means that your ads can show for things that match your keyword or for words that are closely related, like synonyms or common misspellings. Broad match will even match with longer phrases that also contain your keywords. When you start out, broad match is going to capture the most people, but it also might bring in a lot of irrelevant searches. Let's look at some examples. A keyword of women's hats will match with the following search terms: women's hats, drawings of women's hats, women's caps, which is a variation of hats, hats for girls, so Google is going to use girls as a synonym for women's, and you'll notice the order does not matter here. It'll match for sewing a woman's hat, but it will not match for, say, purple hats. It must contain the word women's or a variation of that and hats. But you can see here how this is very broad. If you're trying to sell women's hats, you wouldn't necessarily want to be matching for drawings of women's hats, per se. So let's look at the next type, and that's broad match modifier. Broad match modifiers are going to be signified in your ad groups by using a plus sign directly in front of the keyword that you're interested in controlling. So you'll see here that if I were to add this keyword to Google, I would add plus women's plus hats. By doing this, you're telling Google that the keyword directly following the plus sign has to appear in the user's search query exactly as targeted or a very close variant. Now, ads can be triggered to display for modified broad match keywords if the user query is a typical misspelling, an abbreviation, an acronym, but not a synonym. It's also important to know that with broad match modifiers, the keywords can still be in any order. Now, this might still yield you irrelevant clicks, but it's getting you closer to what you want to do. Let's look at some examples. If I added into Google plus women's plus hats as my keyword, I'm going to match with the following: hats for women. Drawings of women's hats will match, but I will not match with women's caps because caps is a synonym of hats, and synonyms are not allowed in broad match modifier. I also won't match for hats for girls, but I will match for sewing a woman's hat, and I will not match for purple hats. And this is the broad match modifier. Next up is the phrase match. And phrase match restricts traffic even further by locking down the order of things. It's signified by adding quotes around the phrase. So in this case, we put the quotes around women's hats. Now this means that the phrase must be in the specified order. So hats for women won't work, and also that won't work because there's a word for in there. So women's hats has to appear exactly like it does in those quotes. It can still, however, contain some terms before or after the phrase, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So if we added into our account women's hats in quotes, we're going to match with women's hats, by women's hats because you can have a word before or after the phrase, woman's hat because woman is such a close variation to women that Google's going to go ahead and show the ad for that. You will not match for girls' hats. You will match for sewing a woman's hat because, again, word before is okay, and woman's is a close enough variation of women, but you will not match for women's baseball hats because you're putting a word in between the phrase. Then we have the exact match. And when you add a keyword in as an exact match, you're going to use a bracket symbol to apply this modification. So in this case, you would put brackets around the term women's hats. Now, this means that the search cannot contain any other terms. It has to be exactly what's in the brackets. Nothing before it, nothing after it. That's it. That's your entire search term. It's still going to display for very close variations, and this is a common theme with Google. They're going to give you the woman as well as the women's in the exact match. Let's look at some examples. So here I would add the keywords in brackets, and I'm going to match for women's hats and women's hats, and that's about it. I won't match for women's hat because of the pluralization. I won't match for girls' hats. I won't match for sewing a woman's hat. I won't match for women's baseball hats. And this gives us the ultimate level of control. Remember, we can have lots of keywords in our ad groups. So we could be bidding one price for women hat and another for women's hats, plural. We could be sending people searching for girls' hats to one landing page and people searching for ladies' hats to another. And that's where the exact match can come in very handy. If you're looking to be very specific and save some money, it's not a bad idea to start out with the specific terms in your exact match. You're going to get low volume, but you're going to be able to test the waters. Now, Google is going to tell you the otherwise. Google will want you to start broad and refine down. Now, in some situations, that's not bad, but you're going to be spending money on those broad keywords. And most people prefer to start specific and broaden out so you can save some money and slowly figure out what works over time. Now, there's one last type of keyword, and that's the negative keywords. And this is a type that allows you to remove words from the search terms itself. And this will use the minus symbol added to the modifier. So in this case, you'll add minus women. And that means that anytime someone does a search term for women or woman, your ad will not appear. Negative keywords are an excellent way of filtering out irrelevant traffic. You might use this with the term free or course or class. This way, if someone was searching for free women's hats or how to make women's hats classes, you're not going to show up. An example of this would be, let's say that you were using the term women's hats, but you restricted the keyword women. Now, this seems like an obscure use case, but it's still valid because what it'll do is still match you to synonyms. So girls' hats, ladies' hats, but you're not going to match to women's hats, women's hats. You'll get girls' baseball hat, but you won't get, say, women's baseball hats. So if you still wanted to bring in those synonyms, you could still use the keyword women's hats minus women. Now, again, that's not a typical use case, but I'm just trying to show you an example of how you can be using the negative keyword. So you can see, with this many match types, we can get pretty specific about what kinds of traffic we like to show our ads to and what kind of reach we like from our campaigns. In the next several movies, we're going to look at creating a campaign for the Landon Hotel. Now, we're back in the account we created earlier, and as you can see, it's a blank slate. From your AdWords account, you'll navigate to the Campaigns tab, and if this is your first time creating a campaign, you're going to get this button in the upper left-hand corner called Create Your First Campaign. I'll go ahead and select that now. This is the menu that you'll see after you select that button. But what I want to do is show you what this page looks like after you've gone ahead and set up your first campaign. So as you go about creating additional campaigns, you'll know what to expect. And to do that, I'm going to quickly create a campaign, and then I'll bring you back to your campaign's dashboard. Now, this is typically what it looks like when you come in to create your campaign. Again, here I'm in the Campaigns tab, but as you can see, we've already created a very generic campaign called Campaign Number 1. Here on the left-hand side of the screen, it's this large red button, and as I select it, you get several options from the drop-down menu. These are your campaign types, and the campaign type determines things like where your ads can show to customers and what format they can be in, such as text or video. The most commonly used campaign types are search network only, display network only, and search network with display select. If you create a search network only campaign, your ads will appear throughout sites on the Google Search Network. Remember how we went through and conducted our keyword research? The search network only campaign will connect the words or phrases people are using to search on Google to the keywords that you've set up to trigger those ads. Remember, this campaign is useful if you want to connect with customers right when they're searching for your product or services. The other option just below this is the display network only campaign. This campaign type matches your ads, which can be both text ads and image or video ads, to relevant websites. If you recall, the display network will put your ads on pages that have content related to your targeting options. And the option here at the top, Search Network with Display Select, allows you to leverage both networks simultaneously. Google is going to try to default you into the Search Network with Display Select option. However, I suggest for your first campaigns, you choose the Search Network only. I'll go ahead and select that from the dropdown, and we'll go to that page that we saw earlier. And this is the page that we'll be using to modify and set up our campaign settings. At the top, we have the option to provide the campaign a name. And below that, we can confirm the campaign type. And to the right, we can set up our sub-campaign type. Now, typically, you'll start by setting up a name. However, when in the full screen view, Google will remove the name when you adjust the subtype. So I'm going to talk about these sub-campaign types first, and then we'll go back and discuss the campaign name. By default, you'll be in the standard view of the features that need to be set up. Now, I recommend clicking on the All Features radio button to include some of the optional things that we can do when setting up our campaigns. Unlike standard campaigns, All Features search campaigns let you choose from all the AdWords features available within the search network, including mobile settings, ad delivery methods, and ad extensions. This gives you a lot of opportunity to dial in your ads exactly as you want them. Below All Features, we have some alternative sub-campaign types. There are mobile app installs and mobile app engagement, which we won't be getting into for this course. Below that, we have dynamic search ads. And dynamic search ads let you skip the whole process of picking keywords altogether. If you select this sub-campaign type, Google will look at the content of your website and figure out the targeting for you. Dynamic search ads are very useful if you run an e-commerce website with lots of products. You can scale your advertising more efficiently because you won't have to create keywords or ads for every product page of your site. However, I'm not covering that in this course, but feel free to experiment with it on your own. Below that, we have the call-only ad. And the call-only ad is used if you want to only drive phone calls, no website clicks. But instead, you're going to be prompting the customer to immediately call a phone number that you've selected. I have a short movie on this type of advertising in my weekly marketing tips series. So if this interests you, check it out there. All right, so I've already gone ahead and set up all features. So let's go back and talk about our campaign name. Here, Google is suggesting campaign number 2 because this will be the second campaign that I've created in this account. Now, that's a terrible name. It's not descriptive, it doesn't really tell us anything, and it's going to make things very confusing as we scale up our advertising. I suggest you start by thinking about your campaign name alongside the goals that you've established earlier. In this case, I would start with the type of campaign, which will be search, so I'll go ahead and add search. And I like to use the pipe symbol to distinguish between each section of my campaign name, but you can use whatever makes sense for you. Next, I would put in my objective. In this case, we're going to be building a campaign for the Landon Hotel's summer discount. And so our objective is online reservations. Then I'll add another pipe, and I'd like to include my targets. These are going to be the people or the sites or the areas that I'm going to be targeting. In this case, we're going to be targeting the USA, San Francisco intent. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, why did you put San Francisco intent? I'm calling it this because I'm going to target people in the USA who have expressed intent in traveling to San Francisco through their search keywords. Next, I'll add the effort, and that's going to be summer discount. And if you'd like, you could also add any additional details. You might indicate if this is a mobile-only campaign, the language of the ad, any advertising extensions you're using, and so on. I'll add English. Now, this is just one way of structuring your campaign names. Do what makes the most sense for you and your method of staying organized. When you think of your naming conventions, assume that you're going to want to be filtering these campaigns in the future. So I might want to go into my campaigns list and filter for all campaigns with the word search or online reservations, and so on and so on. Moving along, I'll scroll down to the section for networks. You can see the word networks here on the left-hand side of the screen. And Google's already gone ahead and selected both the Google Search Network and the option to include search partners. Now, including search partners means your ads can show up in response to searches on other Google properties like Maps or Shopping, as well as other sites like Virgin or AOL. Generally, a best practice is to start without using the search partner network. So I'll go ahead and uncheck that box, which means we're only going to be using the Google Search Network. Once you've tuned your campaigns, you can enable that partner network later to extend your reach. Below this, you'll see the headline for devices, and you'll notice there's no options here. Up until recently, you could limit your campaigns to showing on only mobile devices or tablets or desktops, and you could even target specific operating systems like iOS or Android, because they could create dedicated mobile or tablet-specific campaigns. But it also meant that there was a lot of extra work to manage these separate campaigns. With the recent introduction of what Google called enhanced campaigns, campaigns now target all devices by default. And within the campaign later on, we use what are called bid adjustments to dynamically raise or lower our bids based on the device. And again, we'll look at those bid adjustments and how they apply in a later movie. This recent change suggests to me that Google is very adamant that mobile is an absolute must for all advertisers. They default all campaigns to start out with access to mobile, and for most advertisers, this will really extend your reach. So now that we've seen how to create a new campaign and we've walked through some of the basic settings, it's time to take a look at the geographic and language targeting options, and we'll go ahead and do that in the next movie. At this point, we've created a new campaign and we've gone through our general settings. Now I'm going to continue scrolling down until we get to the locations heading here on the left. It's here that we'll review our location and language targets. At first glance, there are some pretty generic radio buttons next to these locations. I can choose all countries and territories, my country and countries nearest to me, my country, or the option for let me choose. In this example, we want to be showing our ads to everyone in the United States because our keywords will be used to restrict the focus to those who are expressing an intent in our particular location. So I would choose the radio button next to United States. But if you're running ads for your local business, you might want to restrict things even further. You could start by targeting by state. In this case, I'll choose Let Me Choose, and then start typing in a state, say California. You'll notice AdWords provides you with a dropdown, and you have several options that are matching the term California. Here we have the entire state, we have California City, we have some universities, and so on and so forth. To the right of the link, you can see the reach, and this is how many people are included in this specific location. Here we can choose Add, Exclude, or Nearby. So if you wanted to do all of the United States except for California, we could then choose California, United States, Exclude. In this case, let's choose Add, and you'll notice it's now in the Targeted Locations table. We could remove it by choosing the Remove link. We could also add in a particular zip code, say 93101 for Santa Barbara. Here I can choose the zip code, or it also shows me the whole city, Santa Barbara. In other words, the zip code itself is probably not encompassing the entire city, and therefore Santa Barbara has more than one zip code. So it's suggesting maybe I want the whole city as opposed to that particular zip code. I'm going to go ahead and remove that and show you what happens in the advanced search box, which is this link here on the right. When I select this, we get some even more interesting options. In this interface, you can still do your searches, but you have additional options available to you. Let's say that we only wanted to target people within a 50-mile radius of Santa Barbara. To do that, I'll choose radius targeting from the link at the top. I'll type in Santa Barbara, and then I'll choose 50 miles for my radius and hit search. Here on the left, we can confirm that the radius is 50 miles around Santa Barbara, and then I can choose Add to add it into my targeting. We can also look for location groups. I'll select that link here at the top. And from the dropdown, we can choose a group type, maybe places of interest. So here, if I type places of interest within Los Angeles, I see a dropdown appear, and I can select Los Angeles, California there. And then I have the option to choose the type of place of interest. So I can choose airports, central commercial areas, or even universities. So if I choose airports and then hit Add, Google's now going to target airports within Los Angeles, California, so any airport within Los Angeles. So as you can see, the advanced targeting gives you even more granular control over how you want to set up your targeting. I should also point out that all targeting works in the AND relationship, meaning that everything you add is going to target that and anything else. So it's not a restrictive. If you choose California and airports near Los Angeles, you're going to get everyone in California and anyone near airports in Los Angeles. Let's scroll down, and I'll choose the plus icon next to the Locations Options Advanced link. And this brings in a Target and Exclude Advanced option. It's important to know that there are two main ways that Google can determine if you, as a web surfer, match the location criteria. The first is if you're actually physically inside that location target. And Google uses things like your IP address and cell signals to figure that out. The second is if you're not actually in that location, but if you show a specific interest in the targeted location. So in this case, I opted to allow anyone in the USA to look for the Landon Hotel, because I'm going to use San Francisco as part of my keywords. But I could alternatively restrict my location to San Francisco and select this third option labeled People Searching For or Who Show Interest in My Targeted Location. And what this would do is restrict it to anyone who's looking for San Francisco, whether or not they're in San Francisco at all. I highly recommend that you simply leave these defaulted for the time being. You can experiment with the impact of modifying these variables as you build out more and more campaigns. Next up, as I scroll down, you can target people who speak specific languages. I'll choose Edit next to the word English, and you can choose from a list of languages that Google provides. It's important to know that Google will not translate your ads for you. So a good rule of thumb here is that unless you have a really good reason, you should be targeting only one language per campaign. And this ensures that you're showing ads in languages that people can understand. And that's it for your audience criteria. In the next movie, we'll continue on to review our bid settings. At this stage, it's time to talk about our bid settings. So I'm going to continue scrolling beyond the languages section, and we'll arrive here at the bid strategy section. You'll see I have bid strategy, default bid, and budget. Before we talk specifically about your bid strategy, let's consider that when you select your AdWords budget, there are two things you need to keep in mind. How much is a sale from a potential customer worth to me, and what is the maximum amount I want to spend each day? Let's say the Landon Hotel is trying to get people to stay at their hotel. First, we need to decide how much we're willing to spend to achieve that goal. We can start by looking at our product. In this example, let's say we make $100 in profit on an average stay at the hotel. So if a customer